Imagine yourself waking just before dawn. The first light seeps in, not through windows, but through cracks in the wooden shutters. Your room is small, very small. The upper floors where you sleep are the cheapest, which is another way of saying the most dangerous. Fires are common, collapses too. But for now, the structure holds, no more than a few paces across. The ceiling beams sag slightly. The walls are rough and unpainted, and you can hear everything through them: footsteps on the stairs, the creak of the neighbor's floor. Someone coughing heavily, someone else shouting at a child. Where hot beans and flatbread are served to workers on the go, you don't stop. Not today, perhaps tomorrow. You may have lit the fires before your master stirred, fetched his sandals, drawn his bath, cleaned his chamber pot. Your meals are cold and plain. Perhaps porridge, perhaps a crust of bread dipped in watered wine. You eat quickly in silence and only when permitted. You live in an insula, a Roman apartment block, and like most insula, it is overbuilt, undermaintained, and crowded beyond belief. Perhaps you sweep temple steps for a modest wage, or grind flour at a communal mill, the dust of it coating your arms and throat. You rise from a straw-filled mattress and pull on a tunic. The coughing, the shouting, someone playing a pipe, someone laughing, or another man has been condemned to exile. You listen, and you don't. These things change little for you. The fabric is rough and smells faintly of smoke and sweat. Temples receive their incense. Forum fills with murmuring citizens. Men in togas discussing law, women watching their children closely. There are vendors with trinkets, street performers with flutes, and somewhere, always, the sound of hammers on metal. You light a tiny oil lamp if you have one. You fold your tunic beside your bed. You stretch out on the straw mattress and pull a thin woolen blanket over your shoulders. You may find brief respite in a colonnade or under a cloth awning, but mostly you press on. The rhythm of Roman life is relentless, even when it is routine. Beneath your feet, the wooden boards are uneven and splintered. There's no running water, not here. If you need to wash, you'll do so later, very tired. You pass others whose lives you do not share. Men in fine sandals, their cloaks brushed clean. You pass beggars too, their hands open, their eyes down, perhaps at a public fountain or the neighborhood bathhouse. If you can spare the coin, you descend narrow stairs to the street. The smell of the city greets you, not harsh, not revolting, ... We're not careful, it will land on your shoulders. You carry a small cloak not just for warmth, but for protection, but thick. Smoke from cook fires, heavy, sloshing, and you begin the slow walk back through streets that are beginning to buzz. Bakers shout from open doorways. A man sharpens knives on a whetstone in the shade. Someone offers dates and figs from a basket. Above, laundry flaps on ropes stretched across the alley. The temps of olive oil, wine-soaked alleyways. Warm bread, if you're lucky. It's in the sharp, unmistakable scent of refuse and chamber pots, emptied from above. You keep an eye on the windows as you walk. People dump waste into the street without warning. You head toward the public fountain, the Lacus. Water flows continuously from a carved spout, supplied by the aqueducts that wind through the hills. It's a marvel of engineering. And yet the line is long. Women fill clay jugs. Children splash and argue. A slave holding his master's water pail stands to one side, waiting silently, knowing better than to interrupt. You gather your water. You pass a thermopolium, a kind of Roman fast food counter. If you are a tradesperson or laborer, your day begins early. Perhaps you lay bricks in a villa. Perhaps you scrub amphory in a wine shop. If you are a slave, your day is already well underway. By midday, the sun burns high and steady. Roman streets are narrow and shade is scarce. The heat reflects off stone and brick. Shops open and close. And then, around you, the chatter swells. News from the provinces. A senator has spoken, or a grain shipment has arrived. As the day winds down, your feet are sore, your hands are chapped, you are tired. At night, you climb again the stairs to your room, and you listen again to the footsteps above you. The fire flickers low. You are exhausted, and tomorrow it begins again. Gaul, conquest and glory, yet Caesar knew that in Rome, popularity was fleeting, unless it was backed by military strength. He sought and secured the governorship of Gaul, a vast restive region to the north, rich with opportunity and rebellion. And it was here for nearly a decade that Caesar made his name immortal. They were many and detailed, and often brutal, and returned with spoils and stories. They were subtle propaganda, written in the third person, designed to show his calm command and decisive action. He sent regular updates, known as Commentary de Bello Gallico, carefully written accounts of his exploits. We will not dwell long on his campaigns, but know this: Caesar marched, recorded, and conquered. He subdued tribes, built bridges over great rivers, crossed the channel into Britain. His old ally and son-in-law Pompey now stood against him. The Senate, wary of his growing power, demanded he step down, return, face trial. They were not dry reports. While senators in Rome argued and postured, Caesar was building an empire within the empire. Crossing the Rubicon, their alliance and their child Caesarion would deepen the complexities of his legacy, but success breeds fear. And here in 49 BCE came a quiet moment that echoed louder than most. Pardoned enemies, passed reforms. He doubled the size of the Senate, restructured debts, reformed the calendar into the one we still use, with July, of course, named for himself. To obey meant obscurity. Cities opened their gates. His wife Calpurnia begged him not to go to the Senate. His enemies scattered. He wore a laurel crown always, claiming it hid his baldness, but many whispered. Was it meant to suggest kingship? There among men he had known for years, men he had forgiven. He was attacked. Pompey fled to Greece. To defy meant civil war. Caesar stood at the banks of the Rubicon, a small river marking the edge of Italy. To cross it with troops was forbidden. He crossed. Civil wars would follow. Alliances would shift. And eventually, from the embers of Caesar's rule, his adopted heir, Octavian, would rise and become Augustus, Rome's first true emperor. Quietly, purposefully, he marched south. Their hopes, their fears, their need for order and spectacle was swift, coordinated. 15-20 men or more. In German, Kaiser, Tsar. In the chaos, no single wound was said to be fatal, but together they silenced him. Caesar pursued Pompey across the sea, winning a decisive victory at Pharsalus. Pompey fled again to Egypt, where he was killed before Caesar could arrive. What followed were years of war, not shouted here, but slowly unfolding. And so Caesar stepped into Alexandria, into palace intrigue and shifting sands, and there encountered Cleopatra, young, intelligent, and politically astute. Dictator for life, returning to Rome, Caesar found the city weary and fractured. He restored order. The people loved him, his soldiers loyal to the end. But the Senate grew restless. He was named Dictator Perpetuo, dictator for life. He refused the title of Rex, king, at least in public. But the symbolism was growing hard to ignore. The Ides of March, on the morning of March 15th, 44 BCE, Caesar awoke in his home, said to have been troubled by dreams and omens. But he went. At the theater of Pompey, a temporary meeting space for the Senate, he entered, unguarded. We will not dwell on the violence. He fell at the base of Pompey's statue. And with that, the Republic's final illusion cracked. The silence after Caesar's death did not restore the Republic. It unleashed a new wave of chaos. But that is another story. Caesar's name. Caesar would become more than a name. It would become a title, carried across empires. Even now, centuries later, it carries the weight of ambition, brilliance, and hubris. He rose not just because he was clever or brave or lucky, but because he understood people. And though he fell, it was not with fury or fanfare, just silence. A silence that Rome never truly filled again. Let us leave behind the smoky lanes and cracked cobbles of the Roman slums, and now turn our attention to a single figure, a man whose name still echoes across the centuries. It's not with thunder, but with the quiet weight of inevitability. Gaius Julius Caesar. Tonight, we will not follow him to glory. Into the patrician Iuli clan, noble in name, but not especially powerful at the time. His family traced its ancestry, rather poetically, to Venus herself, through the mythical Trojan prince Aeneas. But such lofty origins did little to pay the bills. Quiet shift, and with it came responsibility. It's a ruthless dictator who had seized control of Rome and begun purging his enemies. Sulla demanded that Caesar divorce Cornelia. He wandered through the countryside, through minor postings in the east. He wore a beard and simple clothing, symbols of mourning and humility. He survived malaria. He studied rhetoric on the island of Rhodes. Caesar refused. He wrote poetry. He exercised. He joked with his captors. And, with the confidence of someone already certain of his future, promised that once free, he would return, have them crucified. Caesar was now the head of his family. Off the coast of Asia Minor, Caesar's ship was taken. Influence flowed not from gold, but from favors owed and friendships purchased, simply as a matter of justice. As he saw it, the pirates held him for ransom, demanding 20 talents of silver. Caesar began to climb the ladder of Roman political offices, the cursus honorum, each step more visible than the last. Pontifex Maximus, head priest of Rome, secured by clever campaigning and generous bribes. And finally, consul, the highest office in the Republic, though shared as always with a second. He served as a military tribune, then as a quaestor, managing financial affairs in Spain. He wept, it said, upon seeing a statue of Alexander the Great there, not out of admiration, but frustration. He was now in his 30s, and felt he had accomplished little in comparison. Caesar, ever composed, told them they had undervalued him. He suggested 50. It was also around this time that he married Cornelia, daughter of Cinna, a powerful figure aligned with the popular reformist faction. We will not raise standards above a cheering army. We will not shout his victories or glorify his fall. Instead, we will walk beside him, slowly, along the quieter corridors of his life. We will follow his footprints in the dust. From the steep stairways of the Subura to the quiet stillness of the Senate floor, where history took a silent, irreversible turn. A boy in the Subura, he smiled often. His speech was clear, measured, and persuasive. Even those who disliked him found themselves drawn into conversation, disarmed by his ease. The historian Suetonius notes his fastidiousness, from his neat toga to his clean-shaven face. His hair, thin even in youth, was combed carefully forward. Caesar was born in 100 BCE. The Subura, where young Julius was raised, was not a neighborhood of luxury. Tucked into one of Rome's busier hillsides, of sandals on stairs, of street performers playing out fragments of old tales beneath weathered porticos, it was dense and chaotic. A tangle of balconies, market stalls, overflowing fountains, and second-floor brothels. Streets rang with gossip and clatter. Merchants shouted. Donkeys clopped along the cobbles. Laundry hung between buildings like banners of daily struggle. His early years were shaped more by sound and rhythm than by politics, the rhythm of grain being pounded. And yet even then, young Caesar observed everything, a marriage, a dictator, an exile. When he was just 16, his father died. But this union placed Caesar in opposition to Sulla. This act, seemingly small, nearly ended his life before it began. Stripped of his priesthood and inheritance, Caesar fled Rome. And along the way, he was captured by pirates. This tale is often told with flair, but we'll take it slowly. For nearly 40 days, he lived among them. He did. Not with glee, not with flourish. The climb through Rome's ranks, returning to Rome, then came higher offices, Edau, where he staged lavish games to win favor. During this rise, Caesar accumulated debts, enormous ones. But these too were a kind of investment. He knew how Rome worked. His gift was not brute force, but charm and calculation. He forgave insults, understood appearances. Now, let us step away from the marble columns of Rome and the echoing halls where great names once spoke in low tones. Instead, imagine a road, long and worn, cutting through thick forests and wet moorlands. There is a soft mist rising, clinging to your cloak and eyelashes. The earth beneath your sandals is springy with moss. They are the soldiers of Legio IX Hispana, the 9th Legion. In each step, muffled by the quiet hush of a distant land. You are far from home. We are in Britannia now. And ahead of us walks a formation of men, steady, silent, wrapped in woolen cloaks and Roman order. they marched north. But a soft mystery lost in gaps between stone inscriptions and crumbled parchments. They were not a nameless group. The Ninth had a long, storied history. They had fought in Hispania, in Gaul, in the civil wars of Caesar, and later in the conquest of Britain under Emperor Claudius, and they never came back. A shadow on the map, the fate of the Ninth remains one of Rome's quietest riddles, not a grand conspiracy. They had held the line at the edge of empire, in the damp and wind-bitten outposts along the Roman frontier. No poet sang their last stand. The tribes who lived there, often collectively called the Caledonians or Picts, though many smaller groups existed, did not build cities like the Romans. They moved with the land, fought with guerrilla tactics, and knew every pass and hollow, though the exact count varied with time. Iron helmets with cheek guards, lorica segmentata, overlapping metal strips over padded tunics, sandals fitted with iron hobnails. Each man carried a heavy pack, a scutum shield, and a short sword, the gladius. They marched beneath the banner of the bull, their symbol, and carried with them everything they needed to shape the wilderness. Tents, tools, weapons, discipline. Their names simply ceased to appear. But then they vanished from the record. No final battle is recorded. The silence is what makes the mystery so enduring. Into the north, let us picture them. The men of the Ninth, rising with the cold. The legion would have numbered somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 men. Their armor was practical. In the north of Britain, the land was moody, a patchwork of forests, peat bogs, rolling hills, and cold rivers. The Roman approach, methodical, rigid, struggled in this terrain. It is here, somewhere beyond the Roman road system, beyond the known forts like Eburacum, that the Ninth was last definitively seen. The theories, so what happened? Archaeologists and historians have offered several theories, none definitive, but all quietly compelling. 1. Annihilation in northern Britain. The most traditional theory suggests the Ninth was dispatched north to quell a major tribal uprising, perhaps a coordinated resistance among Highland clans, and were ambushed and wiped out. It's easy to imagine. The mist, the dense forest, the unfamiliar terrain. Perhaps they were lured too far, stretched too thin. Perhaps messengers never returned. Perhaps the storm broke too fast to retreat. Or perhaps the records were written later, by those far away. Rome, for all its order, was also vast, and the loss of a legion in a remote province might not have been a priority to document in detail. A Roman legion was formidable, but not invincible. If cut off, surrounded, and denied reinforcement, even the disciplined lines of the Ninth could be swallowed by the landscape. But if such a dramatic loss occurred, why is it not recorded? Perhaps the loss was too embarrassing. 2. Reassigned, not destroyed, but in the collapse of supply lines or civil unrest within a fort or city. Perhaps it was not a single battle, a slow dwindling. Deserters, disease, mutiny. Some inscriptions hint that elements of the Ninth may have appeared in Germania, or even the Middle, the East in later years. A disastrous loss, especially under an unpopular general or governor, could be quietly erased from the official narrative. Could they have been quietly merged with another unit? Another theory suggests the Ninth did not die in Britain, but was reassigned to another posting, perhaps in the East. Could the mystery be less a tragedy and more a case of poor paperwork? Dedication stones? The last firm evidence of the Ninth in Britain dates to around 108 CE in York. It's possible. Legions were often restructured, renamed, and shifted around. But if this is the case, why is their sudden absence from Britain so stark? New forts were built. In the reign of Hadrian, the emperor famously ordered a wall constructed across Britain. Hadrian's Wall, not far from where the Ninth had last marched. The lack of physical evidence in later postings raises doubts. 3. Lost in a rebellion. Some speculate the Ninth was caught in the fallout of a rebellion, not in battle. The North, morale was always fragile. Far from the comforts of Rome, even veteran soldiers could falter. Supplies were uncertain. Finally, there is the possibility that the ninth's fate was deliberately obscured. In an empire that valued prestige and power to conquer, to bring the weight of Rome's order to the wilderness, documents might be lost or never written. Stones left uncarved. The absence becomes the only record. What the stones say. Today, archaeologists trace the ninth's presence through artifacts. Tiles stamped with the legion's mark. Pieces of armor. After that, no firm trace. Later legions arrived. Some say the wall was built because of the ninth's disappearance. Others say it was simply the next step in controlling a difficult province. But even Hadrian's wall, with all its stones and measurements, does not tell us what happened, merely sits, silent, where the empire once ended. Legacy in the mist, the story of the ninth lives on, not in triumph, but in mystery. It has inspired novels like The Eagle of the Ninth films, theories, perhaps that's fitting. Most of Roman history is loud, proclamations, victories, speeches carved into marble, but the ninth story is quiet. It's the creak of leather in a wet forest, the flicker of torches in fog. No final orders. They came to civilize, and then they were gone. Let us leave the wind-swept frontiers and the lost paths of the Ninth Legion behind now. We return to the very heart of the empire, to Rome itself, where the streets buzz with controlled chaos. And every glance might carry political weight. But this time, you are not a foot soldier or a laborer. Today, imagine yourself as one of Rome's most powerful citizens. Wrapped in the scent of olive oil, damp marble, and hot bread from street vendors, there is a low murmur of distant voices and the cry of a hawker in the alley below. But within your domos, your private home in the Palatine district, it is still and dim. You are a Roman senator, part of the elite ruling class. The city stretches before you, pale and sun-drenched, letting the morning light spill in softly across the mosaic floor. The day begins. It's holding a basin of water for your hands and face. Another lays out a tunic, freshly laundered, the fabric crisp with the scent of laurel and sun-drying, but refined walls painted with delicate frescoes, the bed a low frame with wool-stuffed mattress, the linen sheets smoothed by servants the night before. A slave quietly enters and draws back the curtains. The toga, a large, heavy wool garment, is far too cumbersome to arrange alone. It requires at least one assistant to wrap its folds properly, draping the fabric across your shoulder in the style befitting a man of status. Its weight rests on your shoulders as a reminder of dignity, responsibility, and constant scrutiny, waking in marble silence. But you travel not on foot. A litter carries you slowly through the Via Sacra toward the Forum Romanum. It's the open roof, and falls gently onto the indoor pool below. A quiet meal is served, a light breakfast called Ientaculum, the Temple of Saturn, the Basilica Julia, the rostra where speeches are made. It is a world made of stone and echo. You promise support for an upcoming bill, carefully, vaguely. Another senator corners you about a friend's legal trouble. You listen, never agreeing aloud. Every word is calculated. A nod. Family connections, public appearances, and private whispers. A half smile. Conversations begin in low voices, not about family or weather, but alliances, votes, debts, favors owed. Your bedroom is modest by imperial standards. A young servant kneels beside the bed. You eat slowly, listening to the distant city begin to hum. You are not rushed. Thanks to dozens of enslaved staff who know their roles, but true decisions are made outside these walls. In gardens, in courtyards, over wine, their hours, their silences. Your household runs on quiet efficiency. The morning routine, next comes the bath, though not a full one yet. That is reserved for later in the day at the public baths. For now, your bath is brief and cold, just enough to awaken the body and prepare the mind. You sit in the atrium, where sunlight filters through the compluvium, fresh bread, perhaps a few figs, and watered wine. The toga ritual then, the day's formal ritual begins. You do not dress yourself. No senator would. There is something ceremonial about the process, like putting on armor, but for politics. The white toga with its broad purple stripe, the toga praetexta, marks your rank. To the Forum, by the time you step outside, the streets of Rome are alive. Dust rises beneath cartwheels, and the air is thick with voices. Along the way, you pass shrines, statues, and temples. And it is your stage. In the Forum, men of your class greet one another with polite stiffness. Politics in Rome is not a matter of parties. It is a web, a careful, constant dance of influence. You speak with a magistrate. You visit the Curia, Julia, the Senate House, where debate moves with slow, theatrical rhythm. Speeches are long, hands raised in emphasis. Letters and laws by midday, you return home for a short rest and a dictation session. A scribe reads correspondence aloud. You respond to letters? To clients, governors in distant provinces, political allies. Wax tablets are filled with your words. Letters will be carried by couriers on horseback or sea vessel. Seeking your support for his son's legal case, you offer a nod and a vague promise. Another name to remember is 2. Is politics maintaining networks across the empire, from Spain to Syria. A client stops by, a man of lower status, perhaps a freedman or a minor official. Your memory must be vast, your words careful. An afternoon at the baths, and finally the frigidarium. You hear rumors. A general is gathering support in the east. A wealthy family is losing favor. Slaves light oil lamps and prepare the triclinium, the dining room. A rival senator's daughter is to be married. Slaves rub scented oils onto your skin, then scrape it clean with strigils, curved bronze tools. In the afternoon, it is time for one of Rome's oldest customs, the public baths. Even here, among friends, your mask never fully slips. You walk or ride to the Thermae of Agrippa, or perhaps the grand baths of Caracalla. Slaves clean the tables, snuff the lamps, sweep the floors. You walk alone through the colonnade, past statues of ancestors, toward your sleeping chamber. Here senators and citizens alike bathe, gossip, and mingle. Every nod, every phrase, every silence must be measured. The hierarchy persists, but the atmosphere is more relaxed. Thinking of letters unanswered, alliances unspoken, speeches still unwritten. The conversation drifts from politics to philosophy and back again. Toasts, just the slow, artful exchange of words. You move through the apoditerium, then to the tepidarium. Caldarium, in the steam, conversation flows more easily. Guests are carefully chosen. Allies, potential supporters, men of similar or slightly lesser rank. Slaves bring dishes in procession. Boiled eggs, olives, garum-drenched fish, honey-roasted dormice, and sweetened wine. Everything is information. Evening feasting and theater as the sun lowers. You return to your domus. Dinner. The cena is a leisurely, elaborate affair. You recline on a couch. There's music, perhaps a girl with a harp or a poetry reading. No raised voices. You do not eat for hunger, but to maintain presence, grace, balance. Night falls on power when the guests depart. The house quiets once again. The city murmurs outside. Somewhere a fountain trickles. You lie on your side, wrapped in soft wool. Being a Roman senator is not just a position. It is a constant performance. And so you sleep. Not deeply, but watchfully, within the most powerful city the world had ever known. Let the halls of power fade now. Leave behind the marble villas and whispered politics of the Forum. Sunlight glinting off clay. Rooftops and splashing in gold along the fluted columns of an enormous public complex. The air is warm and fragrant with a mix of herbs, olive oil, and something vaguely metallic. Water vapor rising from heated stone. Now, imagine yourself walking along a broad, paved Roman street. You've arrived at one of Rome's most beloved institutions, the public baths, at a stage where the citizens of Rome, high and low, mingled under the rising steam. Most Romans ended their day here, not simply for cleanliness, but for routine, for rhythm, for the slow shedding of the world's weight. The Thermae were more than a place to wash. They were a daily ritual, a social center, whether rich or poor, senator or freedman, soldier or craftsman. Arrival in the apoditerium, it's a bustling space, lined with stone benches and cubbies for storing clothing and shoes. You hand your tunic to a capsarius, an attendant boy who watches over garments and valuables, sometimes vigilantly. Nakedness levels the field. Others are lounging quietly, some speaking in hushed tones, others simply breathing in the warmth. Of course, some try to stand out still. Jewelry, perfumes, gestures of familiarity with high-ranking bathers. You pour a little into your palm and begin to rub it across your shoulders, arms, and legs. The oil prepares your skin for what comes next. But for most, this is a space of gentle surrender. Sometimes not. The space is open and echoing, tiled in colored mosaic, the floor worn smooth by thousands of sandals. Voices rise and fall in Latin and Greek. The sounds bounce softly off the stone. You enter through the atrium, greeted by the cool shadow of the portico. You pass beneath carved arches and find yourself in the apoditerium, the changing room. The air is soft and embracing, like a second skin. The floor is gently heated beneath your feet, the result of an ingenious system called the hypocaust. Fire stoked below a raised floor circulates heat up through flues in the walls. There is laughter. Everyone here is stripped of rank, literally. In the baths, the togas and titles of Rome are left at the door. Tepodarium, the warm embrace. You step next into the tepodarium, the warm room. Here you sit on a stone bench and let your body adjust. Slave arrives with a small flask of scented oil, perhaps myrrh or rosemary. Tepidarium, the warm embrace. You step next into the tepidarium, the warm room. The air is soft and embracing like a second skin. The floor is gently heated beneath your feet. Others are lounging quietly, some speaking in hushed tones, others simply breathing in the warmth. You pour a little into your palm and begin to rub it across your shoulders, arms, and legs. The oil prepares your skin for what comes next. The result of an ingenious system called the hypocaust. Fire stoked below, some bathers sit on the edge, legs dangling. Others immerse themselves fully, closing their eyes, letting the warmth seep deep into their joints. A raised floor circulates heat up through flues in the walls. Here you sit on a stone bench and let your body adjust. A slave arrives with a small flask of scented oil, perhaps myrrh or rosemary. Caldarium heat and sweat now. You move into the caldarium, the hot room. The moment you pass through the heavy door, the air thickens. The ceiling disappears into vapor, and the warmth is nearly overwhelming, but strangely soothing. The worries of the day, even the noise of the city dissolve. This is the closest a Roman citizen comes to peace. What woman was seen leaving whose villa? The center of the room is a large, hot plunge pool, steam curling off its surface in delicate whirls. You feel your muscles loosen, and yet it is not silent. A retired soldier recounts the sound of Germanic war horns. Here, a wide pool of clear water waits, still and glassy. The light is dimmer. The air cool, even bracing after the heat of the caldarium. A philosopher quotes Seneca, and his friend nods politely, eyes half closed. In the corners of the room, conversations ripple. Two merchants murmur about a grain shipment from Alexandria. It is here, amid the heat and sweat, that much of Rome's gossip and rumor is exchanged. The air on your skin is different now. The city feels newer, somehow. The temple of Jupiter glows in gold as dusk settles over the Capitoline Hill. You walk slowly. Body warm and clean, the last whispers of the caldarium echoing in your ears. Softer, who's gaining favor with the emperor, whose son disgraced himself at the games. What new law is being quietly drafted? He applies more oil to your skin and with practiced care begins to scrape it away, carrying with it the sweat, dust, and oils of the day. Even in relaxation, Rome watches itself. Stragiles and oil before leaving the caldarium. You perform the ritual of scraping. Slave brings a strigile, a curved bronze blade used not for cutting, but for cleaning. The sensation is not unpleasant. It is slow, rhythmic, even meditative. A final release. 8. This process, more than any other, marks the bath as a ritual of renewal. The literal and symbolic removal of the outer world, you feel lighter. Not only cleaner, but emptied, reset. Frigidarium. The cold return. The final room is the frigidarium, the cold room. You step down into the water. It's cold, startling at first, but quickly invigorating. The sensation is like waking from a long dream. You do not linger. This is the closing note of the ritual, A return to alertness, to the self. You dry off with a rough linen cloth, retrieve your clothes, and redress in your tunic. It's a world of marble and murmur. As you leave the baths, the sun is lower. Shadows stretch across the stone pavement. The city sounds are quieter, gentler now. A fruit seller calls out in the distance. You are a Roman, and in this daily ritual, you have stepped into something timeless. The baths are not just for washing, they are where Rome exhales. Let the comforts of the baths now fade into the memory of warmth and whispering steam. Our journey continues, away from the marble and mosaic, far beyond the tepidarium, beyond the bustling markets and shaded forums of Rome, carved through hills and forests by thousands of hands. Beneath your sandals, the familiar rhythm of the Via Militaris. The military road echoes with quiet authority. Gravel, dust, stone, step by step, you march into the unknown. We are now at the edge of the empire. The road stretches ahead, straight and unyielding. You are a Roman legionary, or perhaps an auxiliary. The cornicin, the hornblower, lets out a low, rising note from the curved cornu, a signal to rise. The chill of the morning clings to your cloak. You tighten your belt and lace your boots, the Caligay low rhythmic chants to keep the feet moving and the mind from drifting too far. Worn smooth from months of marching, one among tens of thousands stationed at the frontiers. Far from home, far from comfort, tethered not to land or kin, but to duty, order, and the grinding passage of time. The rhythm of the march your day begins early. Before dawn has warmed the frost from the grass, the camp stirs, muted voices, the scrape of iron on wood. Then it's time to strike camp. Some dig ditches, others dismantle tents. The cry of birds is replaced by the rustle of leaves. In the north, the air is cool and damp, and the smell of moss and wet stone rises with each footfall. In the east, dust clings to your skin like a second garment, and the heat makes the iron of your armor radiate like a quiet hearth. You shoulder your sarsana, your marching pack. It is heavy with tools, cookware, rations, spare tunics, and the constant clink of metal. The hiss of coals stirred to life. You break your fast with a simple meal. Hard bread, a bit of dried fruit if you're lucky, and a sip of sour wine. Every soldier has a role. The march begins. Legionaries are trained to walk great distances, up to 20 Roman miles in a single day. The pace is steady, disciplined, no lagging, no talking. The world around you changes slowly. Fields give way to forest. Sometimes there is song, but mostly there is silence. Camp life and construction at day's end, the horn sounds again. No matter how tired, you do not rest until the camp is secure. Each evening, a temporary fort is built. Castra square in shape, always the same layout. Ramparts raised, long stretches of silence. Wooden palisades set in place. Even far from home, the Roman army carries civilization on its back. Ditches are dug. Your tent is shared with 7 other men. Your contubernium, brothers in arms, and sometimes an irritation. There is snoring, quiet disputes over blankets. A cup of wine passed slowly from hand to hand. Letters are written on wax tablets, scratched carefully with styluses, folded and sealed with twine. Owls, branches, the wind across the open plains. But you're exhausted, and soon you drift into sleep. Wrapped in your cloak, dreaming of roads. You eat together, huddled near a flickering oil lamp. Lentils and porridge, sometimes meat if rations allow. Bread toasted on flat stones. There's talk of wives, of farms, of past victories or strange omens seen on the road. Of emperors who passed through just like this, eating from tin bowls, gazing into a fire as uncertain as yours. Sometimes a bard or veteran tells tales, of Teutoburg or of Gaul, of impossible bravery. You say little. Then the night watch is chosen. The rest try to sleep. Often you train and patrol, build and march and wait. The sounds of the forest are louder in the dark. Battles, distant edge. The dust rising in golden clouds behind each march. Autumn brings cold rains and harvests. You can only watch from afar. A handful retire to small farms in distant provinces. Veterans granted land for service, living out their days beside rivers whose names they once feared. Winter stiffens the joints, whitens your beard, and seeps into your bones. Not every campaign brings battle, but sometimes you are called to fight. Even then, the preparation is precise. Armor is polished. Shield scuta are checked for cracks. Weapons are sharpened. You don't think about the fear. Not yet. All drilled endlessly in quiet fields, so that when the real moment comes, there is no thinking, only movement. Instead, you practice formations. The testudo, the tortoise, shields locked tight above and around. The wedge, the line. Something heavy, something far greater than any one life. When a clash comes, it comes fast, and it leaves slowly. Afterward, you clean your weapons. You count who is missing. There is no room for reflection, only for moving forward. Seasons and years. Campaigns stretch into months, sometimes years. The seasons shift. In spring, the roads are soft and green, blooming with flowers and new life. In summer, the sun is relentless. You grow older. Some men re-enlist. Others are in honesta missio, honorable discharge. But for many, the campaign continues. The road continues, endless, straight, eternal. A line drawn through the wilderness by men with helmets and silent eyes. The soldier's quiet legacy. When you look around the campfire at night, you do not see heroes. You see laborers, builders, marchers, men who carry not only swords but order, who build roads, bridges, forts, who map the wilderness and turn it into grid work. You are part of something vast. When Rome expands, it does not gallop. It marches, slowly, deliberately, and with iron beneath its feet. And somewhere out there, in a distant century, someone will stand on a broken road and wonder who first laid those stones. It was you. Now we step away from the clang of armor and the discipline of the march as twilight gathers over the empire. In villas and tenements, in frontier outposts, small flames flicker to life on quiet altars. Before marble gods towered above the heads of men, there were simpler shrines, small, tucked into corners. A cup of wine left on a ledge, a morsel of food placed with care, a whisper into still air. Before great temples ever rose above the forum, it was a woven fabric, tangled, practical, reverent, and deeply personal. In the corner, tucked into a niche in the wall, stands a lararium, a small household shrine. Between them, perhaps a tiny flame burns. Offerings are placed, wine, incense, little cakes of flour and honey. And for centuries, it touched every part of daily life. You might bow your head or murmur a simple prayer. If you ask for protection, for stability, for the health of the household. In this moment, religion is not grand. It is humble, intimate. Roman religion was not a single thing, not a single god, nor a single book. It lived in the home, in the city, in the fields, and in the shadows. The city's sacrifices were made in his name. A blend of patriotism and piety, of civic loyalty and spiritual duty. Not gods of glory or conquest, but of flour, oil, salt, the very basics of life. Let's begin. At home, not quite a soul, not quite a guardian angel. It's more like the essence of your vitality, your spirit force, honored on birthdays and special occasions. The lararium, a temple by the hearth. You are at home in a Roman domus, or perhaps in a cramped insula. Two figures painted or sculpted in relief, lares, the guardian spirits of the family, often shown dancing or holding a horn of plenty. Every morning, you light the fire and greet these spirits. Nearby, the penates, guardians of the pantry, are honored too. Without them, the household would starve. The genius and the spirit of the emperor, each man and woman, was believed to have a genius, a personal guiding spirit. This idea extended beyond the home. The emperor, too, had a genius, and by the time of Augustus it became customary to honor the genius of the emperor with offerings. Not necessarily worship of the man himself, but of his role, his essence, his connection to Rome's divine favor. In military camps, small altars to the emperor's genius stood near the flag. Religion and politics, as always, intertwined. The major gods and temples of the Forum now, we leave the household and step into the wide marble plazas of the city. In Rome's heart stands the Capitoline Hill, crowned by the grand temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, Jupiter, the best and greatest. Here, thunder and law, kingship and justice are made divine. Jupiter reigned over a sprawling pantheon. Juno, protector of marriage and women, where men raced through the streets, striking with goat-hide whips for fertility. Saturnalia, a week of overturned order and merriment. Vestalia, honoring Vesta, goddess of the hearth, where the sacred fire in her temple was tended by the Vestal virgins, whose vow of chastity made them guardians of the city's spiritual flame. Minerva, goddess of wisdom and warcraft. Mars, the stern god of war. Venus, of love and beauty. Each had their temple, their priests, their rites. Festivals filled the calendar. Lupercalia, Duut Day. I give, so that you may give. Initiation, a chance for meaning beyond the rigid formalism of traditional rites. If you fail to honor the gods properly, your harvest might fail, your child might fall ill. The gods required acknowledgement. Respect at sea. A sailor tosses wine into the waves, invoking Neptune. Ritual. He leaves a morsel of bread, whispers a prayer to the Lares, his followers gathered in candlelit caves, watching rays of light fall on altars carved with bulls and serpents, partaking in symbolic meals that hinted at mystery and salvation. Ritual. For the devout Roman, the calendar was thick with ritual. Sacrifices at crossroads, processions, games held in a god's honor. The gods of Greece were adopted early on. Jupiter was Zeus, Mars was Ares, and so on. With only their names changed, their essence absorbed into Roman life. Sacred chickens consulted before battles. Lightning seen as omen. Birds watched in flight for signs. But for all its complexity, Roman religion was rarely mystical. It was transactional. They did not require love. Imported gods and foreign cults, but not all Romans were content with the old ways. As the empire expanded, so did its pantheon. But later came more exotic influences. From Persia, Mithras, god of contracts, loyalty, and the sun, whose secretive, underground temples, or Mithria, were favored by soldiers. These cults offered something different, a personal connection. And soon, from Judea, another faith began to grow quietly in the shadows. But that is for another segment. For now, the Roman religious world remains vast, varied, and deeply embedded in the rhythms of life. Whispers and ashes, it is night once more. In a modest home, a man kneels before his lararium. The coals glow red. On a distant battlefield, a soldier speaks Jupiter's name before drawing his sword. In a temple, the Vestal virgins keep the sacred fire alive. And in a back alley of the Aventine Hill, a woman lights a candle before a painted image of Isis, whispering something only she knows. Everywhere, the divine is present, not as a single thunderbolt from above, but as a quiet rhythm beneath all things, a pattern of reverence, a belief that if you did your part, the world would continue turning. And now, let the candle burn low, and the city grow still. Now, let us drift toward one of the most iconic symbols of Roman civilization, the Colosseum, not in its frenzy, not in its roar, but as it stood in the early morning haze, bathed in the golden light of the rising sun, a blend of pageantry, politics, and social ritual. Far more than violence, the arena was about rhythm, spectacle, and belonging. Its arch is quiet, shadows long, the marble still cool to the touch. It is here that Rome's most famous entertainments unfolded. The games it was where the state fed the people's hunger for bread, for diversion, for identity. Let us enter, slowly, before the crowds arrive. Morning at the arena. Vendors are already setting up with trays of olives, sweet dates, warm loaves of bread, and amphorae of watered wine. The day begins early. You walk through wide Roman streets, following the soft murmur of a growing crowd. The Colosseum looms above you, massive, ancient, even in its own time. Beneath the sand lies a network of tunnels, pulleys, trapdoors, all hidden now in the quiet. With its tiers of stone seats rising in solemn curves, and in this stillness, the amphitheater seems almost sacred. But we will only pass through this with a whisper. It's often theatrical, sometimes mythological in nature. A man might play the role of Prometheus and be chained before a mechanical eagle, the crowd murmurs. The sun climbs higher. These men, and even a wounded gladiator, could live to fight another day. The spectacle mattered more than the blood. The poor sit at the top, under the open sky. The wealthy recline on cushioned benches closer to the arena. Senators have marble seats with carved names. These are formal duels, often between specific classes of fighters. A retiarius with net and trident, not baying but judging, applauding skill, or emperor, is asked to decide the fate of a fallen man. A raised thumb might mean death, or mercy, or something else entirely. The meaning of the gestures, in truth, was more nuanced than legend says. The unity of the crowd, the distance between rulers and ruled, and the closeness of spectacle to ceremony. Cheering familiar names, murmuring approval or discontent. An old woman brings a cushion and a jar of figs, sighing into the midday heat. Two gladiators clasp hands before the fight, not as enemies, but as performers, acknowledging the part they must play. Leaving only the quiet rustle of straw and sand, secutor, armored and helmeted, with short sword and shield. A slightly cynical term for the way Roman leaders kept the people calm with grain and games. But it was not just distraction. It was ritual, community, rhythm. A moment to feel Roman, whether you were a senator or a butcher. A murmillo, a Thracian, with its own rules, its own symbolism. You enter through one of the numbered arches, guided by your clay token. A tessera, marking your place in this carefully organized world. Before you is the arena itself. Harina, from the Latin for sand, which covered the wooden floor. To fulfill ancient Roman expectations of generosity to the people, what they called munificence. Bread was given freely, seats were free. A holiday was declared, and in return, the people gave applause, or silence. The games have not begun, not a place of death, but of performance. He placed it over the site of Nero's hated Golden House, a symbolic gesture. This is not for me, it said. This is for Rome, lions from Numidia, bears from the forests of Germania, ostriches, crocodiles, elephants. Creatures captured, caged, transported, and now displayed. Sometimes they performed tricks. Sometimes they simply ran, panicked, across the sand, met by trained hunters called bestiarii. The schedule of the games, a typical day in the arena, unfolded like a carefully choreographed play. In the morning, venations or animal hunts. In the midday lull, executions. In the afternoon, the main event, the gladiatorial contests. But they are not the free-for-alls of modern imagination. Often matches were not to the death. They were expensive to train. The crowd watches at times. The editor of the games often a magistrate the politics of performance, but the Colosseum was never just about amusement. It was politics made visible. To host games was to earn favor, to display power. It was a performance for all, but especially for the gods of order and empire. When Vespasian began construction of the Colosseum, the phrase panem et circenses, bread and circuses, came later. The amphitheater was a mirror, reflecting the power of the empire, a whisper in the crowd, and yet for all its grandeur. There were moments of softness, even here. A child sits on her father's shoulders, watching her first game. In the upper tiers, whispers drift, of bets placed, of favorite fighters, of who will win and who will fall. And when the games end, slowly, the crowd trickles out. The sun sinks behind the city. The Colosseum empties. A single raven circles above the arches. And beneath the seats in the stone cells, the next day's performers sleep. Let us travel now to a quieter corner of the empire, away from the roar of Rome, beyond the noise of armies and senators, to the sunny slopes of Campania, where the Mediterranean breeze carries the scent of citrus, pine, and the distant sea. Here lies Pompeii, nestled at the base of a mountain that once seemed only a gentle neighbor. Vesuvius, green and silent, had not stirred in living memory. Its fertile soil nourished vineyards and olive groves, a moment held forever in amber dust. Its presence loomed more as poetry than threat. A baker lights the fire in his oven. Soon, the smell of fresh loaves will mix with the aroma of roasted chickpeas and spiced sausage. The main street of the town, Cobblestone streets glisten slightly with morning moisture. Street vendors set up their tables. A donkey cart clatters past. The owner, a wiry man with sun-darkened skin, greets you. He offers a steaming bowl of lentils with onions and a crust of barley bread. Its wooden wheels loud in the narrow lanes. You hear water gurgling from a public fountain. The triclinium, the dining room, is laid out with low couches and painted scenes of Neptune, Bacchus, and sea creatures in curling, colorful lines. Sunlight streams through the open roof of your atrium. Olives. No sense that time is rushing forward. Life moves like the fountains in the courtyard. Steady, pleasant, untroubled. Pomegranate seeds. A dish of honeyed cheese. The wine is diluted, as custom dictates, and cool. A priest in white robes steps down from the temple of Apollo, his sandals brushing the marble steps. You pass through the vestibulum, the entrance, into a shaded atrium. The floor is covered in black and white mosaic tiles. A mosaic dog barks silently at your feet. Cave Canem, it warns. Beware of the dog. Where the rainwater basin, the impluvium, is still dark with dew. A man sharpens a stylus, a dog barking far off. But they are muffled, held gently in the thick air, preparing to inscribe one last line of poetry before sleep. A breeze carries the smell of figs and ash trees, lamps lit. The streets glow in the low amber of twilight. Their meals half prepared, a game unfinished, a love letter half written. The people know their neighbors. And though the empire is vast, life here is local, where merchants strike deals, gossips exchange news, and magistrates post public notices on stone tablets. Contained within these walls of painted plaster and sun-warmed stone, this is not a tale of eruption, not yet. This is a gentle walk through the city before the ash, before the silence. The morning streets of Pompeii, some advertise plays. Others praise political candidates. Still others are just graffiti, love notes, crude jokes, lost items. Philosophical musings scratched into the stucco by idle hands. Imagine yourself waking in a modest domus just off the Via dell'Abbondanza. Outside, the city stirs. Children chase one another with small dice carved from bone. The pace is unhurried. Shops, taverns, and painted walls written in a careful feminine script. Pompeii is a working town. You pass by tabernae, small shops with wide front counters, some selling wine, others offering wool, bronze tools, or garum. The fermented fish sauce prized across the empire. On the walls, layers of painted messages. I don't want to sell my husband, but I wish I could exchange him for a better model, reads one. You enter a thermopolium, a Roman street food stall, its marble counters embedded with large clay jars. There is laughter in the air, and smoke, and the easy rhythm of people going about their day. Inside a Roman home later, you visit a wealthier friend, a merchant perhaps, or a retired officer. His home is grand, but not ostentatious. Frescoes line the walls, images of gods, gardens, mythic lovers. There are fruits on the table. There is no urgency here. The forum and the temples at midday, the forum is filled with the shuffle of sandals and the murmur of conversation. You hear the bell of a money changer's stall, the ring of bronze as weights are tested. Nearby, the temple of Jupiter casts a long shadow across the square. It is a sacred space, but also a gathering place. There are statues of emperors, but they do not watch you. They stand, impassive, mute. Symbols, not souls. The mountain looms above, quiet, gentle, unthreatening. You do not yet know what it hides. The evening calm, as the sun softens, Pompeii grows quieter. Shutters are drawn. In a small house near the city wall, a mother braids her daughter's hair before bed. A slave clears the remains of supper. There are sounds, the echo of footsteps, the chirp of crickets in the amphitheater now empty. The echoes of past performances linger. In the gardens, vines twist around stone columns. The moon rises, and all is peaceful. So peaceful, in fact, that the people of Pompeii went to sleep, believing the world would be just the same tomorrow. They left their doors unlocked. They never woke again to finish them. But in this moment, just before, everything was whole. Now, let us take one last journey. Not through a single city or a single life, but across the Roman Empire itself. along one of its most extraordinary achievements, the Roman road. It was the backbone of empire, the quiet heartbeat of conquest, commerce, and connection. Straight as an arrow, solid beneath your feet and stretching beyond the horizon, this road was more than stone and mortar. And where the roads did not end, but simply faded into forest. And our path will take us to the edge of that empire, to Britannia, where Rome met the mists of the north. The road begins. From the Forum to the frontier, you begin your walk in the heart of Rome. Beneath the shadow of the Miliarium Aureum, the golden milestone, placed by Augustus himself in the Forum, this stone marked the symbolic center of the empire. All distances were measured from here. From this point, 29 great roads radiated outward, VAA, public ways built to last lifetimes. You walk north on the Via Flaminia, your sandals clacking rhythmically on the stone. Cypress trees bend in the wind. The road remains quiet, except for the occasional ox cart or traveling legionnaire. Here, horses are changed, travelers rest, and messengers refresh themselves with bread and diluted wine. And yet it never truly sleeps, not when messages, cargo, and soldiers move at all hours. Simple inns, mansionese, provide shelter for a small fee. The air smells faintly of olives and smoke. Wheat fields ripple in the breeze. The roads here are newer, but no less sturdy. The road is paved with large basalt slabs, expertly laid and gently curved to shed rain. A merchant caravan passes, guarded by a pair of stern-faced auxiliaries. Bells on their mules jingle softly. The Via Fossa cuts through the land with mechanical efficiency, unconcerned with the terrain's whims. They nod to you, then disappear into the dust. At others, you're crossing rivers on arched bridges made of stone. The water beneath green and murmuring. Mile markers pass by, tall, rounded stones with Latin inscriptions noting the names of emperors and the distances from Rome. To your left and right, tombs of wealthy citizens line the outskirts. The inscriptions are eroded by time and rain. Beneath your feet, a perfect cross-section. Gravel foundation, sand layer, fitted stones, all pressed and locked tight. The air here smells of moss and distant pine. Over bridges that still stand centuries later, across mountains and rivers, the stones beneath your feet are warm. The wind hums quietly through the grass. The road takes you through mountains and valleys. At times, you're walking along sheer hillsides, supported by retaining walls carved directly into rock. You pass Mutatio, the Roman equivalent of rest stops. You sleep beneath the stars, wrapped in a wool cloak, your head on a travel pack. The night hums with insects. The road is quiet. Even in darkness, the empire moves. It's through Gaul and into the fog. Eventually, the road leads you into Gaul, where Roman villas punctuate the landscape. But Gallic tongues still murmur behind closed doors. You walk in the Via Agrippa, the great network through Lyon, up toward the sea. Ferrying across the English Channel, you land in the wild, unfamiliar island of Britannia. The long march north. The roads here are harsher, surrounded by bogs, moors, and wind-blown hills. You follow the Fossway, then turn north toward Hadrian's Wall, where the empire holds its breath. The sounds here are different. Wind through heather, distant bird calls, the soft squelch of wet earth beyond the stones. Roman milestones appear less frequently now. Still, the stones hold. Still, the path endures. You pass marching soldiers in tight formation, the rhythmic thud of hobnailed boots striking stone in perfect unison. Their faces are unreadable, their destination unknown. You wonder how many feet have walked this way before you. Messengers, magistrates, legions, lovers, criminals, and how many will walk it after? The edge of the empire. At last, you reach Hadrian's Wall. The cold northern edge. You place your hand on the rough stone. Lichen clings to the cracks. Beyond lies the wild lands unconquered, unknown. But behind you, stretching like a ribbon through centuries, is the Roman road. Silent, patient, eternal. The sun is low. You sit down at the edge of empire and listen. And now, as we leave behind the busy markets, the smoky streets, the whispers of senators, and the echo of marching feet, we return to the present. And yet, fragments remain. And roads. Those marvelous Roman roads still run, straight and sure, beneath our feet. You've watched empires rise and fall and rise again, all from the comfort of a quiet mind. The Roman Empire has long since fallen, its legions scattered, its language evolved, its emperors reduced to busts in quiet museums. Stones laid by forgotten hands still support the wheels of modern cities. Baths and temples still stand in quiet dignity. Latin still lingers in our words. You've walked the streets of Pompeii, sat in the shade of the Colosseum, served in the ranks of Caesar's army. So now, take a deep breath, turned into a video outline, or converted into subtitles. Let the noise of history drift behind you. The empire is at rest, and so are you. Good night. Let me know if you'd like this script formatted for a voiceover. Ask ChatGPT.